to move up the recital. I was exhausted and not looking forward to getting on another plane. But most of all, I was upset about my brief conversation with Ron Fishman. I didn't like what Ron had said about Nicole and the girls. We don't know the half of it. The half I did know about was bad enough. But Ron seemed to think it was worse than either of us imagined. I also thought back to my conversation with Cora, Ron's wife, and felt another twinge of guilt. I'd pretty much given up on Nicole, but she was still the mother of my kids. I had to do something. If not for her, for them. For a few moments, sitting there in my living room, I wondered if I should threaten to fight her for custody. The idea was not to take the kids away from her. I knew that would destroy her. But to shake her up so badly that she'd finally start trying to get her shit together. The girl was an accident waiting to happen. As I was thinking about this possibility, Cato showed up. He was carrying a towel and a magazine and asked if he could use the jacuzzi. Sure, I said. How was the recital? Fine. Did you talk to Nicole? I went out of my way to not talk to her, I said. You look bummed, man. What happened? Nothing, I said. This shit's endless. You should have seen the skirt she was wearing. She still thinks she's a teenager. Can I ask you something? Cato said. Why is Nicole so fucking mad at me? I didn't want to get into it. All that business about Cato living rent-free without doing anything to earn it. So I told him not to worry. You know how she is, I said. She puts her anger and craziness on everyone else. I noticed the magazine in his hand. It was a current issue of Playboy. Cato flipped it open and showed me one of the girls inside. He said he knew her and could introduce me, but I wasn't interested. He went off to get into the jacuzzi, and I found myself thinking about a Raiders cheerleader I'd known some years back. She looked a little like the girl in Playboy. I dug up her number and called, and when the machine picked up, I left a message. Hey, it's me, OJ. I wanted to see how you were doing and to tell you that I'm a free man. A totally free man. Call me. I hung up and realized that I really did feel kind of free. But the feeling only lasted a few moments. I found myself thinking about Nicole again. Then about Paula. I was pissed at Nicole, and Paula was pissed at me because of Nicole. Maybe I should have taken Paula to the reception. I had tried to be respectful of Nicole and the Browns, and once again I got bit in the ass for my efforts. I went into my home office and started getting some of my things together for the trip. I noticed I only had $100 bills, and I knew I'd need a few fives for the airport skycaps, so I went out to see if Cato had any change. He was already done with the jacuzzi, which he'd left running, and I turned it off and went by the guest house. Cato, man, please try to remember to turn the jacuzzi off when you get out, I said. Did I forget to turn it off? He asked. Man, I used to wonder if the guy was all there. Yeah, Cato, you forgot to turn it off. I'm sorry. I held out a C-note, asked if he could break it, but all he had was 20s. I borrowed one and told him I'd pay him back. I need it, I said. I just realized I haven't eaten anything. I'm going to run over to McDonald's. Can I go with you? He said. Sure, I said, but hurry up, I'm pressed for time. We took the Bentley and ordered at the drive-thru window. I ate my burger on the ride back. Cato saved his for later. I was busy eating, so I didn't talk much. I found myself thinking back to the recital and how cute Sydney had looked up on stage doing her little dance number. It put me in a dark mood. The last few times I'd called Nicole to try to get the kids, which I often did on the spur of the moment, she had gone out of her way to make it hard for me. She always found some reason not to let me take them. The kids are tired. They've just eaten. They've had enough excitement for one day. I couldn't understand it. She didn't even want me to see my own kids. It seemed like she was making everything as difficult as possible for me. It's true what they say about never really knowing another person. Nicole wasn't even Nicole anymore. She was a complete stranger to me. I finished the burger and felt lousy. It had gone down wrong. When we got back to the house, I went inside and started packing, laying some of my things out on the bed. Then I went to the garage to get my golf clubs. There were a few dead balls in the bag, so I set them on the driveway and chipped them into the neighbor's yard. I couldn't seem to stop thinking about Nicole, though. Usually, when I pick up a golf club, the world disappears. That's one of the things I like about the sport. But this time, I couldn't get it out of my head. I remember thinking, that woman is going to be the death of me. It was probably around 9:30 by then. I figured Nicole and the kids and the Browns had finished dinner and gone their separate ways. As I found out later, they'd eaten at Mezzaluna, an Italian place on San Vicente Boulevard, in the heart of Brentwood. Nicole's mother, Judy, had left her glasses at the restaurant, and she called Nicole, who called the restaurant, and learned they'd found the glasses. Nicole was told that Ron Goldman was just finishing his shift waiting tables, and that he would be happy to drop them at the Bundy condo when he was done. I knew none of this, of course. None of this had anything to do with my life. Not then, anyway. I set the golf stuff aside, fished out my cell phone, and called Paula from the driveway. Either she wasn't home or she wasn't answering. I think it was the latter. I called her several times that day to apologize for not taking her to the recital, and it looked like she was determined to punish me. Hell, for all I knew, she was already thinking about moving on. If that was actually the case, I had Nicole to thank for it. The lesson here was simple. It doesn't always pay to do the right thing, especially if you're doing it for people who don't give a fuck about you. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. I was getting old. I could hardly walk anymore, and I'd been told recently that I would eventually have to have both knees rebuilt. Plus, the arthritis was killing me. I was on medication, but there were days when my hands hurt so much I couldn't pick up a fucking spoon. I parked my ass on a low wall near the front door, feeling whipped. I was trying to figure out how it had come to this. I'd been somebody once. I had my glory days on the playing field, a number of high-paying corporate gigs, many years as a football analyst, and even something of a career as a Hollywood actor. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but everything seemed more difficult now. It was a little like that business in Alice in Wonderland, where she has to run twice as fast to stay in place. But hey, if that's what it took, that's what I do. You don't get anywhere in this crazy world unless you fight for it, and I was willing to fight for it. Still, it seemed like every day it took a little more energy, and Nicole was sapping a lot of my goddamn energy. That got me thinking about family, the meaning of family, and specifically about my own family. My mother and father separated when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and we 4 kids, me, my brother, and my 2 sisters, stayed with my mother. She worked in a San Francisco hospital for 30 years, put food on the table, and kept a clean house. My father stayed in the picture, though. The marriage hadn't worked out, but that didn't turn them into enemies. He was always around, and that was an important lesson for me. When a marriage fails, it doesn't give either parent an excuse to disappear. You have to be there for your kids. The way my parents saw it, life wasn't about them anymore. It was about the 4 children they brought into the world. And because they felt so strongly about their responsibilities, they made it work. They talked on the phone every day, but it was never about their own shit. It was always about us kids. And whenever there was a problem, they handled it together. If it was a question of discipline, though, my father took care of it. And when I say he took care of it, I mean he took care of it. In those days, there was whoopings, and everyone knew it. You didn't go crying at child welfare or any of that shit, because 9 out of 10 times, if you got a whooping, you almost certainly deserved it. Hell, I know I did. Then one day, when I was 16 years old, the old man and I had a little falling out. My mother called him to say I'd been disrespectful to my sister, and he came by the house and called me into the living room and asked me to tell him what happened. I told him, and in my version of the story, which I firmly believed, my sister had done wrong. My father didn't buy it, though. He told me to go to my room, and I knew I was supposed to go in there and wait for him to come in and deliver his whooping. But as I waited, I decided I wasn't going to get a whooping. I didn't deserve it, and there was no reason in hell I was going to let him raise his hand to me. When he came into the room, I told it to him straight. "You're not going to whoop me," I said. "What did you say, boy?" "You heard me," I said. "You're wrong this time. You try to whoop me, I'll kick your ass." It was pretty tense. I defied him, and he didn't like it one bit. But he could see that things had changed. I was almost as big as he was by then, and I knew I could take him. And so did he, I guess. He left my room without saying a word to me, angry as hell. And for the next 10 years, we didn't talk to each other. That's right. We went 10 years without speaking. He would come over and hang out, and we even sat at the same Christmas table together, but we never spoke. and everyone knew we didn't speak. It was like family lore. The boy defied him, and they haven't spoken a word to each other in years. A decade later, when I was married to Marguerite, and with my marriage already in trouble, he was at my house in Los Angeles celebrating Thanksgiving with the family. And I turned to him and said something about some football game. And man, the whole room went silent. It was like I could hear my own heart beating. Everybody was staring at us. He talked to him. Did you hear that? OJ talked to him. And my father just answered, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like our decade of silence had never happened. And that was the day we started talking again. I think on some level I had always blamed him for my parents' marriage not working out. And over the years I'd come to see, slowly, that maybe I'd been a little hasty about passing judgment. I had simply assumed he was the bad guy, but I had nothing to back it up. And while he'd been there for me as a father, I guess I was still angry at him. Because I wanted what every kid wants, both parents, together under one roof. Now here it was, years later, with my own marriage failing. And I began to see that there were really two sides to every story. And that maybe my father wasn't such a bad guy after all. I'm not suggesting I was fully conscious of this, mind you. But I believe that on that Thanksgiving afternoon, with my own marriage in trouble, I began to see that I'd been pretty hard on him. And that whatever else had happened, he had always been there for us kids. That was an important lesson for me. And that night, sitting on the low wall in front of my house, my stomach rumbling, thinking about all of this, it hit me with a weird kind of clarity. If you fuck up your marriage, you try not to fuck up your kids. I figured Sydney and Justin would be in bed by then, over at the Bundy condo, fast asleep. I hope so, anyway. I wondered what their mother was doing at that moment. And I wondered what other unpleasant surprises lay in store for me and the kids. For a moment, I thought back to the night I'd surprised her at the Gretna greenhouse, going at it on the couch with her friend Keith in the glow of 24 candles, while the kids were in the house. It made my stomach lurch. Don't get me wrong. Nicole had been a terrific mother, almost obsessive at times, but she'd been screwing up big time lately. It's strange. They say people don't change, but I say they're wrong. People change, but it's usually for the worse. Ron Fishman's words came back to haunt me. We don't know the half of it, he'd said. He was right. We didn't know shit. Nicole was on the fast track to hell, and she seemed determined to take me and the kids with her. I shut my eyes and told myself to stop thinking about it. I looked at my watch. It was 10:03. I needed a shower, and I had to finish packing. As I got to my feet, an unfamiliar car slowed near my gate, then pulled past and parked a short way down across the street. The driver got out and waved from the distance, and at first I couldn't tell who it was. When it came closer, I saw it was Charlie. I'd met him some months earlier at a dinner with mutual friends, and I'd seen him again a few weeks ago when we'd gone clubbing with the same friends. I liked Charlie. He was one of those guys who's always in a good mood, always laughing. And I told him what I tell a lot of people. Stop by when you're in the neighborhood. I guess he took it literally. Now picture this, and keep in mind, this is hypothetical. Charlie reached the gate, and the first thing I noticed is that he wasn't smiling. OJ, my man, what's up? He said. It sounded kind of forced. What's up with you? I said. I went over and opened the gate, and he stepped through and we shook hands. What brings you to these parts? Not much. I was out to dinner with some guys down in Santa Monica. I thought I'd stop by to say hello. You got a strange look on your face, Charlie, I said. Something bothering you? Charlie looked away, avoiding my eyes. It's nothing, man, he said. Come on, I said. You can tell me. He looked back at me, struggling with his thoughts. You're not going to like it, he said finally. My stomach lurched again, and right away I knew. This is about Nicole, isn't it? Charlie nodded. What about her? You're not going to like it, he repeated. Just tell me, I said, already riled, before I get pissed off. Charlie took a step back like he thought I might hit him or something. A couple of these guys at dinner tonight, I guess they didn't know that you and I were friends, he began, tripping over the words. They started talking about this little trip they took to Cabo a few months back. In March, I think it was. And about these girls they partied with. Yeah? Charlie took a moment. It was Nicole and her friend Faye, he said. I'm listening, I said. I tried to stay calm, but I was fit to explode. There was a lot of drugs and a lot of drinking, and apparently things got pretty kinky. Why are you fucking telling me this, man? I hollered. I turned and had to fight the urge to put my fist through the Bentley's window. I'm sorry, man. I thought you'd want to know. Well, I don't fucking want to know. I'm sick of hearing this shit. I'm sorry. That is the mother of my children. I know, man. I'm sorry. That's why I told you. I know you two have been through a lot of shit, and I know it can't be easy, and I thought maybe if you talk to her... Talk to her? What the fuck is wrong with you? I've been trying to talk to her for years. She won't listen to me. She won't listen to her family. She won't listen to her friends. OJ, man, I'm not the enemy here. I turned around, fuming, and tried to count to 10. I didn't make it. By the time I got to 3, I realized that Charlie was right. He wasn't the enemy. Nicole was the enemy. I looked at my watch. I had less than an hour before the limo showed up to take me to the airport. Just enough time to drive down to Bundy, read her the fucking riot act, and get my ass back to the house. Come on, I said, and moved toward my Bronco. Where are we going? Just come. Charlie got in. I started the Bronco, and the gate whirred to life, and I pulled into the street, the tires squealing against the curb. Where are we going, OJ? Charlie repeated. We're going to scare the shit out of that girl, I said. What? Now? It never fucking ends. Every time I turn around, it's something new, and none of it's pretty. This isn't a good idea, OJ. Fuck that. I'm tired of being the understanding ex-husband. I have my kids to think about. I'm asking you, man, please turn around. Woman's going to be the death of me, I said. I was seething by this time, and I began to mimic her. I want to grow as a person, OJ. I want to find myself. I'm tired of everyone seeing me as O.J. Simpson's wife. I'm tired of living in your shadow. OJ, please. You want to know how crazy it got? I said, ignoring him. After the split, after she dumped me, she began calling to tell me about the guys she was dating. Oh, OJ, do you think they like me for me, or do they just want to get into my pants? And you know what I did? I told her to just have fun. I told her she was a great girl and not to worry and to go with her gut. Guys will be lining up around the block for you, I said. You're gorgeous and you're smart. I know you'll pick the right guys. Is that twisted or what? I would think, what the fuck are you doing, OJ? And then I would answer my own question. Well, the sooner she gets this fighting herself shit out of the system, the sooner she'll be back. That's fucked up, man, Charlie said. Tell me about it. I said. I glanced over at him. He looked scared. Relax, man, I said. I'm just going to talk to the girl, and it'll be quick. I'm leaving for Chicago on the red eye. I shouldn't have told you, Charlie said. No, man, you did the right thing. This is exactly what I needed, something to shake me up. This shit's been eating away at me forever, and it's got to stop. I want to get on with my fucking life. I've got to get this under control. You should let the lawyers handle it. Fuck the lawyers. You know what divorce lawyers are? They are the scum of the earth, preying on people at their weakest and most vulnerable. I know. I've given those scumbags $1 million already. Well, maybe they owe you then. Fuck them, I said. I'm going to take care of this myself. We were at Bundy by then, where it meets San Vicente Boulevard. I jogged left for a few yards and made a quick right to get back on Bundy. We passed the light at Montana, and I slowed near Nicole's place. I kept going, though. I took a right on Dorothy and an immediate right into the alley behind her condo, and I pulled a few yards past it and parked on the far left near a chain-link fence. I cut the engine and looked back toward the condo. It was so quiet it kind of spooked me. I looked at Charlie again. He seemed pretty glum. Which one's her place? He asked. I pointed it out. I don't like this, he said. Let's go the fuck back to your house. You worry too much. What if she's with someone? She better not be, I said. Not with my kids in the house. I reached into the back seat for my blue wool cap and my gloves. I kept them there for those mornings when it was nippy on the golf course. I slipped into them. What the fuck are you doing, man? Charlie said. You look like a burglar. Good, I said. I reached under the seat for my knife. It was a very nice knife, a limited edition, and I kept it on hand for the crazies. Los Angeles is full of crazies. Nice, huh? I said, showing it to Charlie. Check out that blade. Put that shit back, Charlie snapped. You go in there and talk to the girl if you have to, but you're not taking a goddamn knife with you. He snatched it out of my hand, pissed. You got to learn to relax, Charlie, I said. Then I opened the door, got out of the Bronco, and stole across the alley. Nicole's condo was one of 2 units, both of them long and narrow, mirror images of each other, fused at the middle. They each had their own entry on Bundy, and they each had a back gate in the alley, but Nicole's gate was broken. The buzzer didn't work properly, and the gate opened if you gave it a little push. I must have told her 1,000,000 times, please get the goddamn gate fixed, but the woman never listened. I slipped past the gate, into the narrow courtyard, and moved toward the front door, and right away I noticed lights flickering in the windows. I moved past the front door to take a closer look. There were candles burning inside, and I could hear faint music playing. It was obvious that Nicole was expecting company. I wondered who the fuck it was this time. I wondered if maybe Faye was coming over with some of her boy toys so that they could get all wild and dirty while my kids were sleeping upstairs. Just as I was beginning to get seriously steamed, the back gate squeaked open. A guy came walking through like he owned the fucking place. He saw me and froze. He was young and good-looking with a thick head of black hair. I tried to place him, but I'd never seen him before. I didn't even know his name. Ron Goldman. Who the fuck are you? I said. I just came by to return a pair of glasses, he replied, stammering. Really? A pair of glasses, huh? Yes, he said. He was carrying an envelope. Judy left him at the restaurant. I'm a waiter at Mezzaluna. So it's Judy, is it? You're on a first-name basis with Judy. At that moment, the gate behind Goldman squeaked again. Charlie walked into the narrow space. He was carrying the knife. Everything cool here? He asked. I saw this guy walking through the gate, and I just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be any trouble. This motherfucker wants me to believe that he's here dropping off a pair of Judy's glasses, I said. I am, Goldman said, appearing increasingly nervous. He held up an envelope. Look for yourself. And then what? I said. You going back to the restaurant? No, he said. My shift's over. I'm just leaving these here and going home. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything, he said. I'm telling you the truth. You're a fucking liar, I shouted. I'm not. I swear to God. She's got candles burning inside. Fucking music playing. Probably a nice bottle of red wine breathing on the counter, waiting for you. Not for me, Goldman protested. Fuck you, man. You think I'm fucking stupid or something? Suddenly the front door opened. Nicole came outside. She was wearing a slinky little cocktail dress, black, with probably not much on underneath. Her mouth fell open in shock. She looked at me, and she looked at Goldman, and she looked out at Charlie, just beyond. Goldman was pretty well trapped. Charlie stood between him and the rear gate, and I was barring his way to the front. OJ, what the fuck is going on? I turned to look at Nicole. That's what I want to know, I said. Cato, the dog, came wandering out of the house. He saw me and wagged his tail. Then he saw Goldman and also wagged his tail. I looked at Goldman, steamed, and Charlie moved closer, the knife still in his hand. I think he sensed that things were about to get out of control because I was very close to losing it. I'm listening, motherfucker, I said to Goldman. OJ, Nicole hollered. Leave him the fuck alone. What are you doing here anyway? I thought you were going to Chicago. Fuck you, I said. Hey, man, Goldman said, that's not necessary. Charlie piped in. Let's just get the fuck out of here, OJ. I asked you a question, motherfucker. What are you doing here? You delivering drugs? Leave him alone, OJ, Nicole shouted. I hear half you assholes are dealing on the side, I said. Nicole came at me swinging. Get the fuck out of here, she said. This is my house, and I can do what I want. Not in front of my kids, you can't. Fuck you. No, fuck you. I gave you everything you could ask for, and you fucked it all up. She came at me like a banshee, all arms and legs, flailing, and I ducked and she lost her balance and fell against the stoop. She fell hard on her right side. I could hear the back of her head hitting the ground, and she lay there for a moment, not moving. Jesus Christ, OJ, let's get the fuck out of here, Charlie said, his voice cracking. I looked over at Goldman and I was fuming. I guess he thought I was going to hit him because he got into his little karate stance. What the fuck is that? I said. You think you can take me with your karate shit? He started circling me, bobbing and weaving. And if I hadn't been so fucking angry, I would have laughed in his face. OJ, come on. It was Charlie again, pleading. Nicole moaned, regaining consciousness. She stood on the ground and opened her eyes and looked at me, but it didn't seem like anything was registering. Charlie walked over and planted himself in front of me, blocking my view. We're fucking done here, man. Let's go. I noticed the knife in Charlie's hand, and in one deft move, I removed my right glove and snatched it up. We're not going anywhere, I said, turning to face Goldman. Goldman was still circling me, bobbing and weaving, but I didn't feel like laughing anymore. You think you're tough, motherfucker? I said. I could hear Charlie just behind me saying something, urging me to get the fuck out of there. And at one point he even reached for me and tried to drag me away, but I shook him off hard and moved toward Goldman. Okay, motherfucker, I said. Show me how tough you are. Then something went horribly wrong. And I know what happened, but I can't tell you exactly how. I was still standing in Nicole's courtyard, of course. But for a few moments, I couldn't remember how I'd gotten there, when I'd arrived, or even why I was there. Then it came back to me, very slowly. The recital, with little Sydney up on stage, dancing a little harder. Me, chipping ball into my neighbor's yard. Paula, angry, not answering her phone. Charlie, stopping by the house to tell me some more ugly shit about Nicole's behavior. Then what? The short, quick drive from Rockingham to the Bundy condo. And now I was standing in Nicole's courtyard, in the dark, listening to the loud, rhythmic, accelerated beating of my own heart. I put my left hand in my heart and my shirt felt strangely wet. I looked down at myself. For several moments I couldn't get my mind around what I was seeing. The whole front of me was covered in blood, but it didn't compute. Is this really blood? I wondered. And whose blood is it? Is it mine? Am I hurt? I was more confused than ever. What the hell had happened here? Then I remembered that Goldman guy coming through the back gate with Judy's glasses. And I remembered hollering at him. And I remembered how our shouts had brought Nicole to the door. Nicole. Jesus. I looked down and saw her on the ground in front of me, curled up in a fetal position at the base of the stairs, not moving. Goldman was only a few feet away, slumped against the bars of the fence. He wasn't moving either. Both he and Nicole were lying in giant pools of blood. I had never seen so much blood in my life. It didn't seem real, and none of it computed. What the fuck happened here? Who had done this? And why? And where the fuck was I when this shit went down? It was like part of my life was missing. Like there was some weird gap in my existence. But how could that be? I was standing right there. That was me, right? I again looked down at myself, and my blood-soaked clothes, noticed the knife in my hand. The knife was covered in blood, as were my hand and wrist and half of my right forearm. That didn't compute either. wondered how I had gotten blood all over my knife, and I again asked myself whose blood it might be when suddenly it all made perfect sense. This was just a bad dream. A very bad dream. Any moment now I would wake up at home in my own bed and start going about my day. Then I heard a sound behind me and turned, startled. Charlie was standing in the shadows, a few feet away, his mouth hanging open, his breathing short and ragged. He was looking beyond me at the bodies. "Charlie?" I called out. He didn't answer. "Charlie!" Still nothing. I went over and stood in front of him and asked the same question I just asked myself. "Charlie, what the fuck happened here?" He looked up and met my eyes, but for several moments it was as if he didn't really see me. "Are you listening to me?" I said. "I asked you what happened here." Charlie shook his head from side to side, his mouth still hanging open, his breathing still short, ragged, and in a voice that was no more than a frightened whisper, said, "Jesus Christ, O.J., what have you done?" "Me? What the hell was he talking about? I hadn't done anything." I jumped at a sound behind me, a high-pitched, almost human wail. It was Cato the dog, circling Nicole's body, his big paws leaving prints in the wet blood. He lifted his snout and let out another wail, and it sent chills up and down my spine. "Let's get the fuck out of here," I said. I hurried toward the rear gate and moved through it with Charlie close behind, but I stopped myself before I crossed into the alley. Charlie bumped into me and jumped back, startled. "What?" he said. I didn't answer. I was thinking about the shape I was in. I was thinking of all the blood. My shirt and pants were sticking to my skin. Even my shoes were covered in blood. I turned and looked behind me, beyond Charlie, and saw a track of bloody telltale prints. "I've got to get rid of these fucking clothes," I said. Without even thinking about it, I kicked off my shoes and began to strip. I took off my pants and shirt, dropped the knife and shoes into the center of the pile, and wrapped the whole thing into a tight bundle. I left my socks on, though. I don't know why, but I didn't see any blood on them, so I had no reason to remove them. As I stood with the bundle grasped in my left hand, I realized that I'd left my keys and my wallet in my pants. I fell to a crouch and dug for them and noticed that my hands were shaking. Charlie stood there all the while, mumbling, "Jesus Christ, O.J., Jesus Christ." He just kept repeating himself, like he'd lost his goddamn mind or something. "Will you shut the fuck up?" I snapped. I found my keys and my wallet, and rewrapped the bundle. Then I stood and hurried across the dark alley. Charlie followed, still mumbling. I got behind the wheel and Charlie climbed into the passenger seat. "Jesus Christ, O.J.," he said. "Jesus Christ. Will you shut the fuck up?" Charlie recoiled, startled, and shut up. I started the Bronco and pulled out, the tires squealing, and raced through the curved alley toward Montana Avenue. When I reached the end of the alley, I made a left onto Montana and an immediate right at the corner onto Gretna Green. San Vicente was a block away, and I made a left there and took it all the way into Bristol, then hung a right to Sunset and made a left there toward home. I glanced at Charlie. He was hunched over, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. "What happened back there, Charlie?" I said. Charlie sat up. His cheeks were wet with tears. He shook his head from side to side and shrugged. I thought back to that horrific scene at the courtyard and to all the blood. I'd never seen so much blood in my life. It didn't seem possible. It didn't seem real. "Charlie?" He still didn't answer, but what the hell? This wasn't really happening. It hadn't been me back there. I'd imagined the whole thing. I was imagining it then. In actual fact, I was home in bed, asleep, having one of those crazy crime of passion dreams. But I was going to wake up any second now. Yeah, that was it. Only I didn't wake up. We were still on Sunset. And I passed the light on Burlingame and made a sharp right onto Rockingham, tearing up the winding hill toward the house. As I approached the gate, I saw a limo moving toward the Rockingham gate from Ashford Street and remembered that I had a flight to catch. I drove past my house and past the moving limo, and in the side view mirror I saw its taillights flare as it pulled to a stop in front of my gate. The driver had probably been waiting on Ashford out of sight, and I wondered if he'd already called the house. I had no idea what time it was. I looked down at the Bronco's clock and saw it was 10:37. Fuck. I was supposed to be in that limo in 8 minutes. I pulled into Ashford and kept going, hanging a right on Bristol, and I parked in the shadows beyond the home of Eric Watts. There was another neighbor on Rockingham who was closer, but his property ran parallel to mine, and I couldn't get inside without running the risk of being spotted by the limo driver. I was going to have to steal onto my property through the Watts place, and I knew just how to do it. I looked down at my lap, at the bloody bundle, then over at Charlie. "You're going to have to help me out here, man," I said. Charlie turned to look at me. His mouth was hanging open a bit and he was breathing kind of funny. He couldn't stop shaking his head. It looked like he was slipping into shock or something. "Charlie, are you listening to me?" He stopped shaking his head for a moment and nodded once, and I began to tell him what I needed from him. "I've got to get into my house," I said. "You're going to have to wait here until I'm in the limo, understand? When the limo's gone..." Charlie looked away, into the darkness beyond his own window, clearly not listening to me. I reached over and slammed his left shoulder into the seat hard, and he whipped around to face me, more frightened than ever. "I need you to fucking listen to me, man," I shouted. "Are you fucking listening to me?" Charlie nodded. He looked scared to death. "Say it. Tell me you're listening." "I'm listening," he mumbled. "Let me spell it out for you, and you better fucking pay attention. Are you paying attention?" Charlie nodded. "Say it, goddammit." I'm paying attention," Charlie said. "I'm going to sneak back into my house. I'm going to take a shower, and get dressed, and grab my bags. And I'm going to get into that goddamn limo we just passed. Did you see the limo?" "No," Charlie said. "Well, there's a fucking limo parked in front of the Rockingham gate, and I'm supposed to be in it, on my way to the airport." "A limo," Charlie repeated. His mouth was still hanging open, and I wasn't sure any of this was really registering, but I didn't have a choice. "Once I'm in that limo and it's gone, I need you to park the fucking Bronco in the driveway, then get into your car and take the fuck off. Do you understand?" Charlie nodded. "This here's the clicker. It'll open the gate. You can drop the key in the mailbox, but run out before the gate closes, okay?" "Okay," he said. I took the key out of the ignition and removed all the keys except the one for the Bronco. Then I set the bundle in his lap. "I need you to take this and get rid of it," I said. Charlie looked down at the bundle, afraid to touch it. "I don't give a fuck how you get rid of it, but make sure it disappears. You hear? It needs to disappear forever." Charlie nodded. "Did you fucking hear me?" I hollered. "I heard you," Charlie said. I made him repeat everything I had told him, word for word. And then I got out of the car and stole into the neighbor's property toward my house. My heart was beating like crazy. I could feel it pounding in my ears. I moved past the tennis court to the little secret path that connected our two properties. Only a few friends knew about that path, and all of them were tennis players. They made use of it whenever I wasn't around to open the front gate for them. Within seconds, I was on my property, moving past my own tennis court. I hung left, moving past the guest houses, all of which are tucked away out of sight and past the pool toward the rear of the main house. I couldn't see the limo from way back there, but I knew it was at the Rockingham gate. I was sure the driver had already buzzed the house by then, and I was pretty sure he'd already called his office to tell them I wasn't there. Still, he was a few minutes early, and he'd hang tight. He'd buzz again in a few minutes. For all I knew, he was buzzing at that very moment. As I was moving past Cato's room, I stumbled against one of the air conditioning units, making a racket, and almost fell down. I stole past, still clutching my keys, breathing hard, and let myself through the back door. I moved toward the alarm panel and punched in the code to keep it from going off. I didn't turn on any lights until I got upstairs into my own room. Then I hurried into the bathroom and hopped into the shower. Not a minute later, I heard the phone ringing. I saw that the bottom light was flashing, the light that corresponded to the Rockingham gate, so I knew it was the limo driver. I figured he'd seen the lights going in the bedroom and in the bathroom and was trying me again. Maybe he thought I'd been asleep. That would be a good thing to tell him.
You're gonna fall.
I let the phone ring, knowing he'd call back, and finished showering. I got out and dried myself, thinking about what I had to do. My bags were pretty well packed, so I was almost ready to go. I slipped into my black robe and went downstairs and grabbed the Louis Vuitton bag and my golf clubs and took them out front and set them in the courtyard. The driver saw me and got out of the limo, squinting in my direction. I hurried back upstairs to finish dressing, with my heart still beating like crazy. I could feel it in my ears and against my temples. But as I looked around, I couldn't understand what I was so worked up about. I took a deep breath and told myself the last hour was just a nightmare. None of that ever goddamn happened. The phone rang again, the lower light, and I reached for it. "Yeah, man," I said. "I know you're here. I overslept and just got out of the shower. My bags are out front." I hit the code and opened the front gate so we could drive through and get the bags, and hung up and finished dressing. Then I hurried downstairs and went outside. The driver was still putting the bags into the trunk of his white limo. "Hey," I said. "Good evening, Mr. Simpson." "We about set here?" "Yes, sir." At that moment, Cato showed up, looking spooked. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "What?" I said. "That banging noise," he said. "A big thump out back, near the fence." "I didn't hear shit," I said. "I was in the shower." "It was a really loud fucking noise, OJ. It scared the hell out of me." Cato seemed to think that someone had been lurking around that part of the house, and he asked me to have a look, so I humored him. We went off in separate directions, and after about a minute, we reconvened near the front door. "I didn't see anything," I said. "You got a flashlight?" he asked. "Jesus, Cato, I'm trying to get out of here. You go look for it and lock up when you're done." Cato went into the house still spooked, and I got into the limo and took off. I think the driver was nervous about being late or something, because he got confused at sunset and took the wrong entry ramp onto the 405 freeway. Once we were en route, I called Cato to tell him to make sure to set the alarm. I didn't get through to him, but I remembered having told him to lock up, and I hoped he was smart enough to set the alarm. "Man," I told the driver, "feels like I spent my whole life racing to and from airports and getting on and off airplanes." "I know what you mean," the driver said. Once we got to the airport, I checked in at the curb like I always do and watched the skycap tag the bags. A couple of fans came by for autographs, and I was happy to oblige. On my way to the gate, I signed a few more autographs, and when I boarded the plane, I shook hands with a couple more fans. One of them was curious about my ring. He thought it was my Super Bowl ring, but it was actually my Hall of Fame ring, and he took a closer look and admired it. I only mention this because there was supposed to be a cut on my ring finger, but it must have been a phantom cut. There was nothing but a ring there. I was asleep before the plane took off, and I slept most of the way to Chicago. A limo driver helped me get my bags and then took me to the O'Hare Plaza Hotel. It was quiet at that early hour, even at the airport, and the ride only lasted about 5 minutes. I got to my room exhausted and stripped and immediately fell asleep. But a short time later, I was awakened by the ringing phone. I picked it up. It was some cop in Los Angeles, either Philip Van Adder or Thomas Lang, I don't really remember, calling to tell me that he had some bad news. Nicole has been killed, he said. Killed, I said, not sure I'd heard him correctly. What do you mean, killed? And the cop said, OJ, we can't tell you, but we can tell you that the kids are all right. Where are you? I looked around the hotel room and came out of my fog. I'm in Chicago, I said. I need you to come back to L.A. as soon as you can, he said. Much later, during the trial, the prosecution made a big deal about my response to that phone call, claiming that I never bothered to ask what had happened to Nicole, and suggesting that I didn't ask because I already knew, but that's not the way I remember it. When I was told that Nicole was dead, my first response was the one I just noted. Killed? What do you mean, killed? And even when I was told that I wasn't going to get any more details, I remember asking, what happened? What the fuck happened? The cop repeated himself. We can't say anything. We're still investigating. And I said, and my kids are all right? And the cop said, yes. As I said, the kids are fine. We need you to come home now, OJ. Jesus Christ, I said. That's all you're going to say. Come home now. OJ, the cop replied. We'll tell you what we know when you get here. We don't know much ourselves. We'll be waiting for you at your house. I went nuts. And I remember screaming at him, begging him not to leave me in the dark. But it didn't help. When it became clear that the cops had nothing else to say, either because they didn't want to share anything with me, or because they didn't know much, I slammed the phone down, stormed into the bathroom, and threw a glass across the room. It shattered against a tiled wall, sounding like a gunshot. I went back into the room and called Kathy Randa, my assistant, and told her what was going on. I just heard from the cops, I said. They told me Nicole is dead. Dead? She said. What do you mean dead? I don't know, I replied. They say she was killed. Oh my God! I told her to call the cops and get a hold of the kids and ask her to please get me the next flight to Los Angeles. Then I looked down at my hand and noticed that my finger was bleeding. I made a few more calls. I called Hertz to tell them I had to go home. I tried calling the cops again, and I called the Browns down in Dana Point. Nicole's sister Denise got a call, hysterical. You brutal son of a bitch, she hollered. You killed her. I know you killed her, you motherfucker. Judita took the phone from her, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. I told her I was getting on the next flight back to Los Angeles and that I'd speak to her as soon as I landed. I got dressed and had the porter come up for my bags, then went down to the lobby and asked for a Band-Aid. I guess I cut my finger in the bathroom when I threw the glass. On my way to the airport, fighting panic, I made a few more calls. I tried to reach Kathy to see if she knew anything else about my kids, and I again tried to call the cops. For some reason, I even tried to call Cato back at the house to see if he knew anything. When I got to the airport, I was told there was a flight leaving at 7:15, but that it was already booked. I spoke to one of the clerks, and she spoke to the manager, and they made room for me. During the course of that entire flight, I sat upright and stuck still the entire time. I felt like I was made of glass or something. And if I moved too much, I would shatter into a million pieces. I also remember trying to control my breathing and thinking that my heart was beating all wrong. I guess I was on the edge of panic. There's a guy in the seat across the aisle from me, and he noticed and asked me what was wrong. I told him that the cops had just called to tell me that my ex-wife had been killed, and that I didn't even know where my kids were. He turned out to be a lawyer, and after expressing his condolences, he gave me some advice. You should contact your attorney the moment you land, he said. You're going to need someone to help you navigate your way through this. Someone? Christ, the man had no idea. I ended up needing a fucking team to get me through it. And even then, I almost didn't survive. When the plane landed, I found Kathy Randa waiting for me at the terminal, along with Skip Taft, one of my attorneys. Both Kathy and Skip looked shocked, but probably nowhere as shocked as I looked. Where are my kids? I said. They're safe, Kathy said. They're on their way to the Browns' place. That all your luggage? Skip asked. No, there's the golf clubs, but leave them. I'll get them later. We hurried through the terminal and talked about what had happened, but they didn't know much more than I did. And I was having trouble hearing them anyway because my heart was pounding and the blood was roaring in my ears. I was fucking terrified, to be honest. Nicole was dead, gone forever, and the police were waiting for me at my house. When we were in the car, leaving the airport, Skip said we should go to his office before we went to see the cops. No, I said. The cops told me they needed to see me, and they said they'd be waiting in my house, and I'm going to my house. I can't go to your office. I'm going to my house. That's what the cops asked me to do. The cops can wait, he said. We need to get a handle on this thing. No, I said. I gave them my word. I'm going. At that point, Skip turned his attention to the radio, and he began flipping through the stations. I picked up bits of information here and there. Nicole Simpson Brown was dead. There was a second victim, a young man. The murders had taken place in the courtyard of her Bundy condo. Police were waiting to talk to O.J. Simpson, who had been out of town but was apparently on his way home. The whole thing felt completely unreal, as if it was happening to someone else, not me. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. What the fuck is going on? I asked Skip. Are people saying they think I did it? I can't believe people would think that of me, that I could do something like that. Skip told me to relax, that nobody could possibly think I had anything to do with the murders. Kathy also told me not to worry. Everything's going to be fine, she said. Did the kids see anything? I asked. No, Kathy said. The police took them out back, through the garage. I felt the bile rising in my throat. It was all I could do to keep myself from being sick. Call the Browns. Don't let them tell the kids what happened. I want to be the one to tell them. They're my kids. I'll call them, Kathy said. When we got to the house, the place was crawling with cops and reporters. It was unreal. We drove up to the gate and I could hear reporters surging behind Skip's car, shouting my name and snapping pictures. This is not a good idea, Skip repeated. We should have gone to my office. I ignored him. I got out of the car and moved toward the gate, and the reporters kept hollering at me from across the street. There was a cop standing guard at the gate, and he seemed a little startled to see me. You going to let us through? I said. Not the car, he said. Not anyone but you. I turned around and saw my friend Bob Kardashian crossing to greet me. I guess he'd been waiting for me there. Jesus, O.J., he said. He looked like he was near tears. They're not letting us in. Skip popped the trunk, and Bob and Kathy reached for my carry-on bags and followed me back to the gate. Skip, meanwhile, backed out and went off to park the car. The cop looked at Kathy and shook his head. Just you, he said. But they're with me, I said. The officer didn't care. He opened the gate just wide enough to let me pass, and left Bob and Kathy behind with the two small bags. The reporters were going crazy, snapping pictures and trying to figure out what was going on. I looked through the gate, back at Bob. He looked ashen. And when I turned back, the cop was reaching for his handcuffs. What the fuck are you doing? I said. I live here. This is my house. I'm sorry, Mr. Simpson. I'm going to have to handcuff you. You ain't going to handcuff me, I said. Mr. Simpson. You gonna handcuff me for what? I'm not crazy. I want to talk to someone. Who the fuck's in charge here? Bob called out from beyond the gate. What do you want me to do with the bags? Hell if I knew. I wasn't thinking about the bags. I didn't realize what a strange part they play in the proceedings in the months ahead. One of them was my famous Louis Vuitton bag, and it gave reporters a lot of nothing to write about. What the fuck happened to the Louis Vuitton bag? What was in the fucking bag? Where was Bob Kardashian going with OJ's bag? The irony is that I was trying to bring the bags into the house with me. You'd think that if there had been anything incriminating in those bags, I wouldn't have tried to lug them inside. But of course, nobody wrote that part of the story. Instead, they made a huge fuss about the missing bags, and even suggested that Kardashian had walked off with all sorts of evidence, maybe even the bloody knife. Still, not once in the course of the entire trial did the prosecution make any attempt to retrieve the bags, which remained untouched for months on end. I began to move toward the house with a cop right on my ass, mumbling about the goddamn cuffs. And when I turned around, I saw the horde of reporters across the street with all sorts of cameras aimed right at us, rolling and pumping. I took a deep breath and figured I shouldn't make a scene. This was my home. I didn't want to see myself on the news later that day giving a cop a hard time about handcuffing me. I had to keep cool. The only thing that really mattered was finding out exactly what was going on. I put my hands behind my back and let the guy handcuff me. He led me toward the front door just as Van Adder and Lang came out of the house. They introduced themselves and told me they were in charge of the investigation. Well, I'm here, I said. I got here as fast as I could. Thank you for coming, Van Adder said. Don't thank me, I said. Just take these goddamn cuffs off me. You shouldn't be doing this to me in my own home. At that moment, Howard Weitzman showed up. He's another attorney, and Skip had called him earlier, seeking his advice, I guess. Maybe he was already there waiting for me, but that was the first I saw him. He looked directly at Van Adder and Lang. Mr. Simpson is in no condition to talk right now, he said. He's still in shock. And I said, no, I can talk. Van Adder asked if I minded going downtown with him and his partner, and I said I didn't mind at all. And Howard said, echoing Skip, that's not a good idea. I don't know whether I was in shock or not, but I was in no mood to listen to lawyers. I'm going with them, I said. I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do. Howard was adamant. He didn't want me to talk to those guys, and he was getting pretty hot and bothered about it. OJ, he said, you're making a mistake. I'm not going to sit here and try to cover my ass, I replied, getting a little hot and bothered myself. I've read enough thrillers and watched enough TV movies and seen enough shit on the news to know that the first guy they go to in these types of situations is the spouse, or the ex-spouse, or the boyfriend. I'm not going to be one of those people who get described as an uncooperative witness. Howard tried to tell me that that wasn't the point, that we needed to take a moment to gather our thoughts and to try to figure out where things stood, and that once we had more information, I could be the most cooperative witness in the world. But I didn't want to wait that long. I wanted to know what the cops knew, and I wanted to know right away. I don't need a lawyer, I told Howard. I'm innocent. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Everybody's innocent. The prisons are filled with guys who didn't do shit. But that's my point. Half of you think I did it, and nothing will ever make you change your minds. The other half know I didn't do it, and all the evidence in the world, planted or otherwise, isn't going to sway you either.
No, thank
But
you,
this wasn't about
Paxalex.
that. This was about me, the prime suspect, the accused party, and I did what all
I'm
accused
signing
men
out
do
now, but
at
I'll
the
be
moment
back
of truth.
soon.
I proclaimed my innocence. Absolutely 100% not guilty, Your Honor. You might remember that phrase. I used it at the beginning of the trial. I turned to look at Howard again. I'm going to talk to them, I said. I don't care about anything else. I want to know exactly what the fuck is going on. And that was the truth. My ex-wife was dead. I was exhausted. I needed to know what the cops knew. I wanted to get through this thing as quickly as possible. And I wanted desperately to see my kids. So I got in the car with Van Adden and Lang, and we went down to Parker Center for the interview. No bullshit, no lawyers, no interference. Just me and them. If it had only been that easy. 7. The interrogation.
That's it. I'm going to take a break now. It's the end of chapter 6. Back soon. Oh, you've just signed in as it's the end of the live stream. Good to see you both, but I'll be back soon with chapter 7. Interrogation. Bye for now. Oh, I do have that cat bingo view. Cat bingo is awesome. I must find the video and upload it. Speak soon. Bye from Ariadna. Bye from Athena.